Oh, I was going to try and do some oh, that's funny from Griff. That's a good comment right off the start from Griff. I was told there would be punch and pie. I don't know who told you that, but there won't be punch
Wasn't
and
me.
pie.
I didn't tweet it.
It wasn't me. I'm sorry to whoever misled you. There will be no punch and pie.
It was probably Greg. He's probably
It was probably
out.
Greg. Greg's a liar.
He's jealous.
So mischievous. Yeah. So jealous of the relationship that you and I have. There will be no punch and pie. I'm sorry, Griff. But you know what there will be is a brand new episode of Disguised Coverage live right now for all of you, family, friends, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth. Aaron, I don't know if you know this. Not a lot of people do. But did you know that the Buffalo Bills have a regular season football game coming up this Sunday?
Heard something about it.
Right? I read something today and I was like, what? Football? I barely knew what people were even talking about. But lo and behold, this is the first regular season episode of Disguised Coverage, as we alluded to just a minute ago and made jokes about that were very clever and well received. The Buffalo Bills 2021 season march towards the playoffs, potential division championship, potential AFC crown, potential Super Bowl berth and or Super Bowl win begins this Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I can't think of a better way to start off the first regular season episode of Disguised Coverage than to have my good friend, Mr. Aaron Quinn from the Cover on Buffalo podcast joining me. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Hey, man. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I've got the game on here in the background, so I get to watch the kickoff football here, watching Thursday Night Football. That's exciting. Was excited that real football was on all day. And then I've been excited to talk to you. We did the show last night with Greg and Neil Coulong from USA Today Sports Wire. And so I've been jacked up talking about this. I've been consuming all the other Steelers Bills content and I ran out. And so I figured, shit, let's make some more Steelers Bills content with you. I got a bone to pick with you though, before we get into football, because you mentioned Wizards, Mudbloods, stuff like that. Saw a tweet in a thread that I was tagged in where you were Team Slytherin all day.
Oh, yeah, I'm a Slytherin house guy all day.
That's tough.
Slytherin all day. They build and breed the best wizards and witches. Granted, you have that evil side to it, but as the Sorting Hat said, if Harry were to go to Slytherin, he foresaw great things for Harry in the Slytherin house. I mean, granted, you have to deal with like snakes and potential awful human beings, but I mean, where don't you? No house is perfect. But give me some Slytherin. The green and gray. Ooh, give me some Slytherin. Ooh, Andrew gets it. Andrew throwing it up in the comments. See, Slytherin. Are you a Gryffindor guy?
I'm not really a Gryffindor guy because they're kind of douchebags a little bit. Like they're a little bit
that's fair.
Full of themselves into how good
we're Gryffindor. Look at us. Yes.
Yeah, we're the good guys. And I'm never into that. I might be more of a Hufflepuff.
That's fair. A little neutral. Maybe some Ravenclaw.
Maybe I could see myself in either of those. Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah.
I'm just chilling in the background, man. I'm not trying to draw attention to myself or trying to be great. I'm just trying to be... I'm cool with super average. I'm
just trying to get by. I'm just trying to graduate, get a degree.
C+ student.
Right? Go into the Ministry of Magic. I'm just trying to get a good job with a pension, benefits. I don't want to have to use my wand and do things.
I'm not looking to fight anybody.
No, I'm not trying to kill Voldemort or he who must not be named.
Right.
We got wildly off track.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen a lot. You know what else is going to happen, Aaron, is we're going to talk about One Pie Pizza. I've mentioned it a lot on Twitter. Cover One has mentioned it a lot on Twitter. Good. Oh, it's delicious. And credit to you and for everybody watching this live viewership here. You're seeing the bottom right corner there, that fantastic logo that says One Pie Pizza Company. It's got beautiful buffalo there, elegant, graceful, intense. It's a sexy logo. That is for One Pie Pizza. Aaron was gracious enough to create this new overlay with the Disguised Coverage up top and the One Pie Pizza logo on the bottom right. And as I've mentioned a ton on Twitter, this show is now sponsored by One Pie Pizza, located in Buffalo. You can find them on Clinton Street. In the show description for this episode, whether you're watching it or listening to it on YouTube, whether you're listening to it on any of the podcasting platforms, in the episode description, you will find the link, the active hyperlink, to take you to the One Pie Pizza menu online. It will show you everything they have, what they offer, prices, everything, phone number, address, where you can pick up the pizza. It is genuinely delicious. I am pumped as hell to have a legitimate sponsor for this show. And just to throw it out there for everybody in case anybody would think otherwise, I would not shill out for anything I do not believe in. This pizza is delicious. They make their own homemade blue cheese, which I am a huge fan of. Go out, go to One Pie Pizza, pick yourself up a pie, and when you order one of their half-sheet pies, which is basically their version of a large, except you get more money for your buck, which is fantastic. When you order a half-sheet pie and you mention that Cover One sent you, you get $3 off, and it's already at a good price anyway. It's a fantastic deal.
Keeping money in your pocket. I like that. This looks like this logo too feels game day to me. Like maybe I should order some for a game day.
You could order some for a game. Get your prep on. I'm a pizza anytime, anywhere kind of guy. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it doesn't matter. Afternoon, evening. It's delicious. Sweet sauce, traditional buffalo pizza. They're family owned. They're good people, good pizza, good food. Cannolis, cookies, homemade blue cheese, all of it. Go out, get yourself some, get ready. I kind of want to stop the show and just go out and get some. But
we should do a show from there, and then we could just eat pizza and talk.
See, this is saying you just bring.
That's why you got to have me on, man.
This is just man. I feel like I don't even want to discuss anything else anymore. But alas, we're going to mention some more One Pie as the show goes on. But go and get yourself some One Pie pizza. Again, link is in the episode description. Anywhere and everywhere you are listening or watching this episode, do yourself a favor. Go see the folks at One Pie and mention Cover One sent you. Good times. Intro. Again, as we mentioned, lead into this episode. There's a football game this Sunday. There's many football games this Sunday. There's a football game on right now, as Aaron alluded to, literally right now. And for those of you tuning in live right now, I thank you for welcoming us into your home or office or work or basement. Yeah, wherever you are, enjoying some Cover One, enjoying some disguised coverage. We thank you for that. But we go into this game against Pittsburgh. I think there's a lot of thoughts. We're going to start talking about the breakdowns, the X's and O's, ins and outs of this game, talk about the Steelers defense versus Bills offense, Bills defense versus Steelers offense, and all that jazz and good stuff. But Aaron, as you mentioned, you guys had a tremendous guest on last night with you and Greg on the Cover One Buffalo podcast, offering a lot of insight into the Steelers side of things and giving that Steelers perspective. And, after you guys did the episode last night, has your perspective of how you felt going into this game in terms of what to look for, what to watch for, or, kind of what was going to happen from the Steelers perspective, has anything changed or clicked in your brain a little bit? Do you have any different focuses or thoughts coming into this game now after having a little Steelers insight dropped on you last night?
Yeah, I think the only things that I took away from that conversation, so I tend to maybe overestimate the enemy on a weekly basis. I think that
nice episode name reference. I like that.
Drop that for you. Yeah, I tend to see on Twitter and fans just get over pumped and we're going to go in and blow these guys out. And the NFL is just not like that. Even when the parity in the NFL, unless you're going up against teams like the Houston Texans and some of the very worst in the league, then you can kind of estimate that your team's going to have a blowout victory. And so Steelers were a tough one for me. First of all, week one, I hate.
Yes.
Week one, I hate talking about what's going to happen because you just don't know who these teams are. We can look back, and we'll look back at some of the numbers from a year ago, but Sean McDermott says it all the time, even with the continuity the Bills are bringing back, that this is an entire new team. This is a new team, a new year, and that's the same for everybody. The Steelers have a lot of new parts, so hard to really see who they're going to be. And so what I felt good about after that show is Neil, who is a Steelers fan, and so he would want to probably talk good about him, was pretty reserved in his take on this team. And so you see sort of the national media's kind of sleeping on the Steelers a little bit. And I wasn't sure if that has Big Ben really fallen off? Is this line as bad as people are saying it's going to be? Yeah. But for him to be as concerned as it showed he was about this matchup with the Bills made me feel a little bit better. I've always thought the Bills were going to go in and win this game, but then after talking to him, I felt they should be able to keep a pretty good arm's length on this team if it goes the way we think it will. So it was kind of verifying some of the thoughts I had to sit down and talk with him.
Nice. Yeah, he was a tremendous guest, as you mentioned in the intro to this episode, and I'm sure everybody who's watching this has seen it already, but if you haven't, check out the Cover One Buffalo episode with Aaron and Greg Tomset, our other third part of this tripod here.
Sister wives.
Yeah, sister wives. I was trying to think of it in my head as I was speaking, and I was like, what's the thing that Aaron said? I can't think of it. I'm forgetting. It's skipping me. But Yeah, I like that. It's an interesting thought. I feel like a lot of people are especially fans are hanging their hat on like, well, we beat them 2 years in a row, and they're not including the whole Duck Hodges aspect, and they're not including how
those
much
games are still close too.
Correct. That's the big thing for me. Like the Duck Hodges game was close all the way to the very end, literally to like the last throw. Mm-hmm. And the Steelers game was still close. The thing that started to separate a little bit was the Taryn Johnson pick six and then the Stephon Diggs touchdown. But their defense, granted, their defense looks different this year, which we're going to get into, but their defense had us on lockdown. Darrell Williams did a fantastic job on TJ Watt. That was a game for me that really was like, oh man, Darrell Williams is worth all of the monies. Give him all the Scrooge McDuck coins. But they played well for the most part, even when they started to like scuffle down that stretch. And then we know they went into the playoffs, had a horrible showing against the Cleveland Browns. And I think a lot of Bills fans are seeing the 2 wins the last 2 years and then that horrible loss to the Browns and are thinking, this is done and dusted. This is easy. I am in the same boat as you. I think the Bills come away with a win in this one. But there are certain aspects to this game that they make me pause a little bit, give me a little cause, for concern. Ooh, dad of a Bills fan coming right through saying Sunday will not be close.
I prefer it that way.
I would prefer that way. I want a prediction, dad of a Bills fan. Type it into the chat. I want to know score prediction. Yeah, how not close. I want to know what score you're predicting right now. If you're going to come with that kind of energy, I need you to back it up. And we're going to start with the side of the ball that we already started to talk about, the Steelers defense, who I got some numbers here, just some things written down. I also have some graphics. I want to mention, I'm going to be pulling up several graphics throughout this episode, courtesy of Mr. Max Robleski on Twitter at Mafia Numbers. Amazing. I literally just DM him things. I'm like, hey, could you like do this, this, and this? I don't know how hard that is. And he comes back 2 minutes later with a beautiful graphic. It's amazing. So, pardon me. Graphics are going to be coming your way, but just some raw stats and metrics and things like that. The Steelers defense, which we know from last year, had a very good year. Aaron, I know you like DVOA. Number 1 in total defense, DVOA. First in pass, 5th against the rush. Number 1 in the NFL in pass rush grade. Number 1 in pressures. Number 1 in sacks. 2nd in takeaways. 5th in coverage grade. 3rd in points allowed per game. 3rd in pass yards allowed per game. Just monster of a unit last year in 2020. But they've changed a little bit. What are your thoughts coming into this game on the Steelers defense? And, what are your thoughts towards them as a whole?
Yeah, so this defense, I still think has the potential to have a really good front seven. I don't think they're going to be able to replicate the success that they had in 2020. I think they had early and often success that was probably up there historically. If they were able to maintain the way they were playing, 24-10 here from Data Bills.
31-17 from Griff.
I'll take both of those. So I think this front seven still presents a lot of problems for any team in the league. Stephon Tuitt being out takes away a big problem that I think generated a lot of pass rush for them a year ago. He was I believe a double-digit sack guy on the interior, which is pretty tough. There's not a lot of guys that do that from an interior spot, which will allow a team like the Bills to maybe bring more focus to a TJ Watt or more focus to some other places. So him being out, but you still have Cam Hayward right there in the middle. And I said on our show last night, I think he's one of the more underrated defensive linemen in the league. He doesn't get talked about enough as a guy that is just consistently way above average, one of the elite guys at his position. And it's not a sexy job playing in the middle of a 3-4 defense, but he does it and he does it really well. And it keeps guys clear off of your TJ Watts and off of your Melvin Ingram. So this front seven's got some ability to get to the passer. They are aggressive. They like to blitz. Getting Devin Bush back, this is one I'm not sure on, because this is one Neil Coulong was telling us he's not sold that he's fully healthy and ready to go for this season, which was interesting to me because I'm a Michigan guy.
That you are.
Love Bush. And I liked what I saw from him when healthy. And I was ecstatic that he wasn't in the matchup against the Bills last year, because I really do think in that second half of that matchup, you saw Brian Dable start to expose the middle of the field where they lost some without having Bush there in coverage. And that wasn't something that teams learned they could expose on the Steelers. And so him coming back, that's an unknown, what they're going to be in that linebacking core. But if he comes back to the level that he was playing at before his injury, I do think this could be a special front seven that can keep this team in games. And there's this constant argument, is it pass rush or coverage, right? And the answer is it depends on your team. It depends on your personnel and your teams. But I do think that there's some probably issues in the back half of this defense in terms of depth. They have high-end players. I love Minka Fitzpatrick. Again, one of my favorite players in the NFL that's not on the Bills. Absolutely love him. I've always liked Joe Hayden, but he's getting up there. He's not the player he quite was. Yeah, a little long in the tooth. That's a good way to put it. So they have a couple high-end names. Edmonds, good box safety, can get up and play in the run. So they have some talent there, but they're not very deep. But I think that this front seven can sort of hide some of those flaws if they can get to the passer and get quarterbacks off their spot. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it to the Bills or not, but I think this defense is going to be what keeps the Steelers in games. You alluded to it in the game last year. They really kept the Steelers in that game for that first half until that Taryn Johnson touchdown. Neither offense was really able to crack that game open, and the Steelers offense was just so much worse than the Bills in that game, and that allowed the Bills to, once they finally got to get that crack open off that interception, kind of keep that game at arm's length. But this defense, don't be shocked if they give the Bills some trouble and do get some pressures on Josh, because I think they still have enough in the front seven to make up for what I see as the problems on the back half.
It's a really interesting juxtaposition with the front half of the Steelers defense and that front seven versus the secondary, because that secondary, Minka Fitzpatrick is so elite, but then Terrell Edmonds, brother of Tremaine, isn't really all that good, especially in coverage. And they lost Mike Hilton, their starting nickel corner, who was tremendous. He's in Cincinnati now. And so now you've got what it looks like. Steven Nelson gone. So now you're looking at Joe Hayden, who you mentioned, Cameron Sutton on the other corner.
Who's okay. He's an all right guy.
But then they trade for Ahkello Witherspoon, who is exclusively an outside guy. Cam Sutton can do the nickel and outside thing. So then it's like, okay, is Cam Sutton kicking into nickel because they don't have faith in their nickel guys coming in now? Is Ahkello Witherspoon going to be on the outside? What does that rotation look like? So there's questions in the secondary. But as you alluded to, that front seven, and I love that you mentioned Stephon Tuitt. I went and I didn't have it written down, so I looked up because I tweeted it earlier this week. So in 2020, and I don't think anybody, if I asked this stat or mentioned player A did this, this, and this, who is this player? I don't think people would guess this person if they had 20, 30 guesses. In 2020, Stephon Tuitt, he had 12 sacks, which was 8th amongst all defensive linemen. Mind you, in the Steelers 3-4 defense, which is their base defense, he alternates between that defensive end and sometimes that defensive tackle spot. So he has snapped a lot at that interior defensive line spot. So 2020, 12 sacks, 8th amongst all defensive linemen, defensive ends, edges, defensive tackles, all of it. He also had 71 pressures, which was 4th amongst all defensive linemen. 71 pressures from Stephon Tuitt. He is a monster on the inside. Cam Hayward gets talked about, like you mentioned. TJ Watt gets talked about. But Stephon Tuitt is tremendous for that defense. And with him not in the game this week and a couple weeks after due to that knee injury, as you said, that's a huge, huge, huge loss. TJ Watt practiced yesterday and signed that tremendous extension. So he will be playing. As far as what shape he's in, what he looks like.
He's in great shape.
He could just chill all offseason and just get up Sunday and kill it. They're just bred.
Those guys are Adonises. They're
just bred differently. It's because they got that Subway in their backyard, like the commercial shows.
Right.
The food
and that Wisconsin cheese. All that Wisconsin cheese.
They're made differently out there, man. Yeah. Built different. And just some numbers for TJ Watt, because I feel like people talk about TJ Watt or know about him. But the details of it. So last year, he led all edge rushers in the NFL with 15 sacks, and he was second in the NFL in total pressures with 73. The only person he was behind was Aaron Donald. Also, to put that into perspective, so he was second in the NFL in total pressures with 73. Stephon Tuitt was 4th, just 2 behind him with 71. You've got 144 pressures combined just between 2 people. Yeah. No one else on the field, just those 2 guys. 71 of them are not there because Stephon Tuitt is out. Huge loss. Also, this is a little fun one. TJ Watt was tied for first last year amongst edge rushers in pass rush win rate. Tied for first. Do you know who he was tied for first with?
Jerry Hughes.
You're damn right he was tied with Jerry Hughes.
I know that because I've been pounding the table for Jerry Hughes, not getting enough GD respect on Twitter from Bills fans, man. Because everybody's in love with Greg Rousseau, and I like Greg Rousseau. But we're forgetting about Jerry Hughes being the dominant, disruptive player in this defense.
Yeah, we are.
It
would be nice if he could get home a little more, but you can't deny the impact that Jerry Hughes had. And granted, he didn't have an all-pro season, but he had a much better year last year than people like to talk about. Too. Oh, yes, 1,000% for his age. I like that you also mentioned Devin Bush. I think this is a big one too. I feel like this didn't register on people's radar that Devin Bush was out last year. Tremendous, I don't want to say prototypical, but like your proverbial sideline to sideline linebacker. Speed, good off ball, good coming forward. It's unfortunate, he went to Michigan because I hate Michigan. No, I don't hate them. I just want you to be sad because you made fun of me because of Miami last week.
Yeah, you had a tough weekend.
I had a rough one. But 2 new middle linebackers there. Devin Bush comes back. They make the trade for Joe Schobert this preseason. They acquired him from Jacksonville. Yeah, I was looking into some of the metrics. So really rough year last year, especially in coverage in Jacksonville. But before that time in Cleveland, very good off-ball linebacker, very good coverage linebacker, to the point that when he didn't re-sign with Cleveland, a lot of people thought that was a huge mistake for an up-and-coming Browns team because he was a key piece on that defense. Goes to Jacksonville, doesn't do good as the entire Jacksonville. I was going to say everybody's not doing good down there. Ask Travis Etienne's foot how everyone does down there in Jacksonville. The only person who did good in Jacksonville last year was James Robinson. Bless his heart.
Miles Jackson's pretty good, but
that's fair. Fair to him. And Laviska Shenault, I like him, but we'll see. So 2 new middle linebackers there. They traded for Akella Witherspoon. So they got new faces, but at the end of the day, that scheme and that structure is still going to be there. This team is led by defensive coordinator Keith Butler, who has been with this team since 2003, I believe. Was a linebackers coach, studied and learned under the defensive coordinator legend that is Dick LeBeau. So he brings that same type of energy when it comes to
uber aggressive.
Yes, blitzing and disguising coverages, no pun intended, and what they do on the back end. This first graphic that I wanted to pull up and show here shows blitz rate by team from 2020. Again, this is courtesy of Mr. Max Robleski at Mafia Numbers on Twitter. So it's just a picture perfect one right here showing, again, simple and straightforward, blitz rate by team from 2020. The Steelers, they blitzed on 38% of their snaps in 2020, third in the NFL, but they're almost right behind Arizona and Baltimore. When you get – it's funny that it's kind of like always stuck because I feel like this is what was talked about from the Steelers like in the 90s. And then obviously like with the Palomalu Steelers, like the blitzing and the blitzing and the blitzing. And it's funny that like we're still here with like another generation of Steelers players, but it's still that same philosophy. They're going to blitz. They're going to play a 3-4. They're going to crowd the line of scrimmage and bring zone blitzes and different schemes and concepts up front. That is still who the Pittsburgh Steelers are.
Ravens too. The Ravens have been doing it for 2 decades as well. You think back to your Ed Reeds.
Oh, that's very true.
I liked one side note on that graphic last year. I really liked how high the Bills were.
Let me pull it up. You know what's funny is I didn't think they would be as high as they were, and I pulled it up there. Yeah, not too far off, and right there with the 49ers. I also didn't think the Seahawks blitzed as much as they did. But yeah, seeing the Bills around that 30% blitz rate. But again, I mean, if you think back to it, kind of makes a little more sense. They started rushing 5 with AJ Klein almost exclusively.
They couldn't hit home.
Yeah, they could not get home, and they didn't like. AJ Klein was struggling in off ball, so they were like, all right, what's the one thing you can do really good? And he was just keep going forward, like run blitzes, quarterback blitzes, like pass rush, like just letting him loose. I think that Seattle game really was that first one when everybody was like, oh man, look at like,
hey, we can do things.
Yeah, he can do stuff. That's when all those AJ Klein apology letters came out and like, I'm sorry, AJ Klein, and like what I'm sorry for and all that stuff. And he had a decent year filling in for the Bills last year. And the Bills up there around 30. This is the fun. I really like this one. You have this in your DMs. This is just, again, another things from Mr. Max Robleski, aka Mafia Numbers. This graphic here that I'm going to pull up shows the snaps, snap percentage by coverage type, and then I'm going to switch to another one that puts things in perspective. So again, this is focused on the Steelers. So you see the big Steeler logo there. So 25% of their snaps in cover 1, 15% in cover 2. That's zone cover 2. Cover 2 in terms of man, so you're too high. They had 34 snaps in that, so not a lot there.
Right.
And then cover 3, 28%, which was good for 20th. Cover 4, 20th%. I think if you're
single high looks,
that you're going to get like, and again, that makes sense. Like you got Terrell Edmonds, and I think this is what we're going to see from the Steelers. Terrell Edmonds is much better around the line of scrimmage. So dropping him down low almost as like an extra linebacker and letting Minka Fitzpatrick just be that single high cover safety in the back, whether it's in cover 1, whether it's in cover 3, those are their, kind of their bread and butter, but a decent amount here, from this graphic, they mix up those coverages. And when you're mixing up coverages on the back end combined with all those blitzes up front, this can be a tough thing to deal with. And I think it's part of the reason why they're so successful.
It is. Although I think this particular matchup, I see that blitz rate, and then I look at the statistics of Josh Allen when blitzed, and I say, bring it. Like I love that matchup. And especially when we talk about the lack of depth in this cornerback room and the new pieces in this cornerback room, because some of that cover 3 stuff, I don't know that. One of the things I'm most excited about the Bills, and they didn't add talent to the DB room, but another year of continuity, I think, is almost just as good as adding talent in terms of when you're playing a lot of zone, like the Bills are going to do, and that type of communication. And I think the Steelers could, early in the season, especially against a team like the Bills, who can spread them out a little bit, which makes it a little bit harder to disguise your coverages when you're spreading out in 10 personnel. I think that type of communication can't exist yet, right? That's going to take them probably until November to where they're really feeling confident with communication. We heard that from Micah Hyde a year ago with those defensive struggles from the Bills. He came out in the media and said, it's just, we're not on the same page with communication. The defensive line doesn't have the communication yet. We don't have the communication with the linebackers yet. And that was causing some of the problems on the Bills defense. So I have a hard time seeing the Steelers. Part of what has made that defense successful, like you said, with the longevity they had, is they had the tools to play cover 1 and blitz and had the guys on the outside to hang. I don't think they do against a team like the Bills. They might be able to get away with this against other teams, but I think the Bills are going to be able to spread them out so much and say, and dare you to blitz, because Josh Allen is so quick now with his processing. Cole Beasley just talked about this last week. He hasn't had a QB be able to throw so quick to him out of these option routes and know where he's going to be. Blitz us all day. I'm going to take the matchup of Cole Beasley or Emmanuel Sanders, Manny Sands, or Gabe Davis, if with Manny Sands limited. Any of those guys versus their third, fourth cornerback in a group that's not very deep. I'm going to take that all day if you're blitzing. I'm going to find the open spots in this cover 3 zone. And so I think I agree with you that it leads to some of their success, but I think it actually hurts them in this matchup against the Bills. I think it plays right into Brian Daboll's hands, and that they're going to be able to sort of pick and choose around the field where they want to. I won't be shocked if they come out and, similar to the preseason, 17 throws in a row type of thing and say, we're going to line up our athletes and good luck.
It's a really, I love that. See, we're just right here.
Clicking, we're vibing, baby.
We are vibing. I love that you brought that up with the idea of what the Steelers can do, because I'm not afraid. Okay. Like blitz, especially when you've got like potential slot receivers or readers of coverage and leveragers of coverage like Cole Beasley and Manny Sands as Stephon Diggs. We'll nickel and dime you down the field. Okay, you want to blitz? Okay, I'm just going to dump it right here to Cole Beasley, 4 to 6 yards. If he breaks a tackle, maybe 7 and 9, first down potential things in there, and taking advantage of those mismatches inside, or taking advantage of Terrell Edmonds and taking advantage of that mismatch if he's coming down low to drop. I wanted to pull up again another graphic, which you are going to see a lot of here. This is a really nice one. So one of the Steelers' main coverages, they were in that cover 3 aspect. A decent amount of their snaps on defense came in cover 3 and cover 1. I pulled up the cover 3 one first because, Aaron, you talked about it first here. So this one's a really nice graphic. So it shows the yards allowed versus the usage rate. So you've got yards per attempt on the left there, and you've got percentage of snaps in cover 3 on the bottom. And Max did a great job of showing you on the little bottom right there that the higher you go, that means a better defense because you're giving up less yards per attempt. And the farther you go right, that's the more you used cover 3. So like, for instance,
I'll take 9 yards.
I'll take 9 yards a clip. So like, for instance, if we use an example, Carolina all the way on the far right, that means they had a ton of snaps in cover 3, over 40%. But because they were up, they were also a pretty good defense, which is a good thing to say about someone. If you're playing a ton
Jeremy
of something.
Chin helps you play zone coverage.
Don't mention Jeremy Chin. It just hurts. I wanted him so bad. It also helps when we've got like Brian Burns up front rushing.
Yeah, right.
And they added JC Horn. I'm excited for that cover 3 defense.
And Daryl Johnson.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Mr. Bam, good special teams guy too. I don't know if you've heard that.
I heard that
special
about
teams.
him.
I heard it somewhere too. But yeah, Carolina playing a ton of cover 3 snaps, but also doing good.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Steelers there. If you look, almost dead on that Y-axis there. But yeah, Aaron, like you mentioned, giving up 9 yards per attempt. That's not great considering you're in that formation, in that personnel alignment, almost 30% of the time, giving up 9 yards a clip. And whether that coverage is coming aligned with some sort of blitz or just a traditional like zone coverage in the back aspect of it, to know that, granted, this is a different year this year, and it's the first
Devin Bush, like we talked about, getting him back.
Exactly, and all these added elements, but this is still going to be a component of the Steelers. This is who they are and the coverages they play on the back end and the schemes and the games. And if one of their main coverage personnel alignments, they're giving up, 9 yards per attempt, I am very much okay with that. And to bring up the other one, again, you mentioned, so single high safety looks, single high cover 3, you got your zone defense, and then single high with a little man coverage would be your traditional
good luck,
nudge,
good luck playing man coverage.
Yeah,
against.
Good luck playing cover 1 against the Bills. And, you made the joke with it, but it's so true. Like, part of the reason I was so excited when they brought in Manny Sands was, good luck trying to zone up these 3 receivers like that, because they can find the open space, they can read the defense, the option route potential, the potential to leverage coverage between Diggs and Beasley and Sands is tremendous, but also that man coverage aspect, like who's covering Cole Beasley one-on-one, who's covering Stephon Diggs, who's covering Manny Sands. And again, if you're running single high, that means Minka is patrolling that entire field in the back, center field, but he's also left and right field essentially at the same time, which means someone's going to get almost a true one-on-one matchup. It's just going to be tough to defend that if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they actually did really good in cover 1 last year. So a little bit of the opposite if we look at this graphic here. So roughly the same amount of snaps in cover 1 as cover 3, a little closer more towards your 20%, whereas in cover 3, they were pushing 30. But in cover 3, where they had about 9 yards per attempt, they're almost at like 4 or 5, a little over 5, about 5.5 yards per attempt in cover 1. But to your point, they were successful in this last year, but I wouldn't advise that if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers going against the Bills.
Not this year. And part of it is we saw throughout the year in Josh's huge progress going forward that there really wasn't much of a defense. Maybe some cover 2 gave the Bills a little bit of trouble, but the Steelers aren't going to get into there. There wasn't a defense. People said, oh, look at his numbers against a blitz. Look at his numbers against man. Look at his numbers against zone. And they were all tops in the league. So there really isn't one thing you can do to this defense. And you brought up a great point of, the adding Manny Sands and what he does in coverage. But I think the Bills, they don't have the most athletic wide receiver core. They don't have guys that are just going to burn the top off you like a James Washington, a deep threat type that the Steelers have. But what they have is separation.
Good point.
Sands, Beasley,
separation
Diggs.
Through route running and explosion, which is just as deadly as pure speed.
Absolutely. And that is, in my opinion, more what matters in the NFL, especially with these quarterbacks like your Patrick Mahomes, like your Josh Allens. I do think these guys are a lot more like Brett Favre's than people think, when they compare him to him. But I make this point all the time. Brett Favre didn't have the reason he was thrown into double coverage and getting so many interceptions all the time is the wide receivers weren't refined like they are today. Guys weren't running routes like Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs are. And these defensive backs also can't get their hands on him in the same way you could in the 90s. So coverage was tighter. And so you were throwing into those looks more. Now with these quarterbacks, that are willing to put the ball anywhere on the field, and you're getting better separation from your wide receivers. Man coverage is tough in this league. There's not a lot of lockdown corners in the league. Bills fans are always clamoring that we need more of these lockdown man coverage corners. They just don't grow on trees, and it's hard to do in this league. And it's hard to do for any period of time. And when Josh Allen can extend a play, good luck trying to hang with Beasley or Diggs for more than 3 seconds in this league. So I'm all for it. If you want to go cover one man and you're going to bring a blitzer, I'm willing to line up 4 receivers or line up a Dawson Knox out wide and say, hey, we'll put our athletes against yours, and somebody's going to get open. You're not going to be able to keep 4 of these guys covered for 3 seconds while you try to get to Josh Allen. And even if you get to Josh Allen, we can extend the play beyond that. So these defensive, even with the cover 3, I think something that's not getting mentioned enough in that type of thing is Manny Sands is great at finding soft spots in zones. Yes. Cole Beasley too. Obviously Stephon Diggs is a great polished all around receiver. I think the biggest leap in the receiving game for Dawson Knox this year, and we saw a little bit of it in the preseason, is his ability to recognize these defenses and find that soft spot. That's something he hasn't had in his game, which that could be big for him. I know everybody wants to see the drops decrease. We all want that. I think it will.
Wait, Dawson Knox has drops issues?
It'll still be there. It'll be there. I don't know if you heard, but it'll still be there. But if he has that ability to just find some space in zone, he's going to become another additional target where, say you lock up all these other guys, you're going to still have to focus on him. So I just think there's too many weapons that are going to stress a weak secondary and a linebacking core with question marks in their ability to cover. And I just think for 4 quarters, you might be able to get away with it for the first half and cause some problems, but I don't think you can do it for 4 quarters against this offense. I think they just present too many problems, and what the Steelers are good at plays into Brian Daboll's hands way too much.
That's a great point to sum it up. Like, I think what Pittsburgh is good at, almost plays into the Bills' hands a little bit. And I think the Steelers have a good defense. And if they were coming in 100%, if I knew TJ Watt was going to be full 100%, if I knew Stephon Tuitt was playing, if I knew Devin Bush was completely recovered and good to go, I think it's not a completely different conversation, but it's a much tougher aspect. Again, those are elite players at multiple levels. Again, just talking about elite, like, you've got an elite player, Minka Fitzpatrick, on the back end. And if you had Stephon Tuitt up front, you've got 3 elite players up front, TJ Watt, Tuitt, and Cam Hayward. And we haven't even talked about Tyson Alualu, who is a tremendous run stuffer. Yeah, really good up front as well. And then, again, the Devin Bush piece, you mentioned what Neil said last night, and that would have been my guess anyway. It was talked about a lot at length about Harrison Phillips last year coming off of his knee injury and how it takes guys really like a full year to get themselves back a little bit. And then year 2 is when you see that progression. And it's tough for anyone, whether it's a big guy like Harrison Phillips who needs to use his legs and his knees to anchor himself, or if it's a fast, twitchy, explosive player like Devin Bush who is changing direction and exploding, all over the field and everything. Like, it's a tough aspect. So I think it's a boost that he's back, but I don't know if he's necessarily going to be that guy. And to your point, I think the Steelers defense is good, but I actually like this matchup for the Bills just because I think there's a lot of mismatch potential. Like, I'm not tremendously terrified of Cam Sutton matched up against whoever he's matched up against. I'm not tremendously terrified. Honestly, even if Joe Hayden shadows Stephon Diggs, I'm okay taking that match.
I'll take him all day.
I'm fine. And what we've seen from this Bills offense, just even so far in the preseason and towards the end of last year, they did it at times. They kind of made their peace with, like, okay, we'll chill on the explosion. Death by 1,000 cuts, 5 yards here, 9 yards here, 4 yards here, 8 yards here, and just so on and so forth. The old John Madden.
And then we'll get a 25-yarder to Beasley.
And get a nice little dig there. Like, I'm okay with that against the Steelers. And especially, with the things that Josh Allen mentioned that he worked on this offseason, those in-breaking routes, those yards after catch aspects, I think you can take advantage of that if he's putting the ball in good placement and allowing his horses to run after they get the ball. If it's anything like we saw in that Green Bay game, granted it was preseason, granted it was the backups, but that death by 1,000 cuts offense, I think, is suited and made to play the Steelers. And if the Steelers do want to blitz their normal amount, which is around 40%, I mean, again, I kind of welcome that. I know there's more coming up front, but that means there's less on the back end to defend a healthy cornucopia of Bills weaponry on the outside. I respect the Steelers defense. I do. But to your point, I don't think it's a matchup that favors the Steelers defense. I don't think their defense is built. It's a good defense, but sometimes the matchups are what they are. I just don't think the Steelers defense, as of right now, how it's, who they have and who's healthy, who's not, who's coming back, I don't think they're built to hang with the Bills. And honestly, even if they were completely healthy, I'd still like the Bills' odds, but it'd be a much different aspect if a lot of those guys were there.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about the ability for the Bills. I think this is going to be a good, interesting matchup for them to try to establish some of the run efficiency that we've heard so much about in the offseason. Because my view of this game is Bills jump out to an early lead, and then there's going to be some ability for them to get a run game going that's going to allow them to really drain this game and sort of keep it at an arm's length. I think it's going to be there without Stephon Tuitt. I think that helps being able to run a little bit. I think you're going to get over aggressiveness out of the Steelers, which we might be able to play off that with some of the run stuff that we're seeing in the preseason. So I think that's something that's not being talked about enough. We saw them really pushing Devin Singletary early in this preseason and getting that run game going. And we saw some nice things out of Zach Moss too. I think people aren't talking enough about that because those runs in the preseason got called back from ticky-tack holding penalties, but he had a nicer preseason than we thought. So there is also some depth to the Bills running back room, which will be able to do some things in this game. They're not going to come out and blow the doors off this Steelers defense, but it'll be a nice bet. They're not just going to come out and throw the entire game here either. So I think there's just too much firepower on this Bills offense. And it's so weird to say as a Bills fan that we have too much weaponry and stress that can cause good defenses in this league that I just don't think a team like this can hang for 4 quarters. The Steelers, what they're going to have to do, their path is not going to be hanging with the Bills for 4 quarters. It's going to be a TJ Watt strip sack, some type of explosive play on the defensive side is what's going to try to keep them in this game. But I think play for play consistency, the Bills are going to win more plays on offense than they're going to lose. And Steelers are going to have to hope to get one of those big, my favorite things, toxic differential plays to keep them in this game.
Yeah, the Steelers are going to have to get, sacks, turnovers, which they've been successful at the last 2 years ago, they led the league in takeaways. Last year, they were second in the NFL in takeaways. Last year, they were also number 1 in sacks. Like, they're going to have a game where they pressure Josh Allen consistently. They get some sacks. They get some takeaways. They get some turnovers. That's where they're going to have to live because I just don't see them drive in and drive out, stopping the Bills, whether just like forcing punts. I don't see them forcing the Bills off the field on downs or forcing punts. They're going to have to get takeaways, make those aggressive plays. And if we can limit that and do what the Bills are predicted to do, it's a successful piece. And one of the comments here goes with what you mentioned, Aaron. Dad of a Bills fan said, "I haven't felt this confident going into a season since '93." Yeah, it's something I
was 9. I don't remember how I felt.
I was just a tiny baby. Oh, this was funny from Griff. He said, "Punts?" ?
Never seen them.
I'm in the same boat. I'm so hopeful that I'm so terrified of it. Because I've never, I say it all the time, I'm a Bills fan and a Red Sox fan. So I'm built for, and I don't care that the Red Sox have won World Series in my time now. I'm built for paranoia. The Red Sox, the Aaron Boone home run forever lives with me. The Music City Miracle, wide right, even though I wasn't really alive and functioning then, will always be in my head. All those terrible I'm just always anticipating the rug being pulled out from under me.
For some reason, I thought you were a Yankees fan.
No, how dare you? No, I despise. The only thing I hate more than the Yankees is the Patriots.
Yankees
and
fans.
Also Tom Brady. Yeah, I hate Yankees fans. They are. I don't even want to get. That's a whole other conversation. But yeah, not a fan of them. Yeah, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of expectation. I think that's the big thing too. It's the expectation and. Right. The expectation is there for the Bills offense. And there's also expectation as we switch gears now to talk about the Bills defense against the Steelers offense. I think there's a good test and an opportunity for the Bills to show out on defense in this game. So a little rundown for the Steeler offense from last year. They were 22nd in offensive DVOA, 21st in the pass, 30th in rushing DVOA last year. They were all about the quick pass, which I'm sure you've heard about. Big Ben was first in the NFL last year in terms of like least amount of time to throw. His average time to throw was 2.3 seconds. He was only sacked 13 times all last year because of that quick passing game. His average completed air yards was 4.6 yards, which was the 5th lowest in the NFL. His average intended air yards was 7.1 per throw, which was the 10th lowest. That Steeler offense last year was all about, and we talked about it going into the Bills game against the Steelers last year, that offense was all about the very short to very shortish intermediate 3-step drop, dump it off, let your guys make plays or try to make plays. Ben gets the ball out quick.
Yep.
And he might need to do that even more so now, considering the offensive line they have. Rob Quinn from Cover One put a tremendous tweet out earlier in the week about the Steelers starting offensive line and where they are in their careers and the amount of snaps. And basically, long story short, you've got Mike Pouncey and David DeCastro and Villanueva, who was their starting right tackle last year. Those 3 guys are all gone. And going into this game, they've got 2 rookies starting, a rookie left tackle, a rookie at center. You've got Trey Turner at guard, who did not play well for the Chargers last year and comes in as a free agent. You've got a lot of question marks on the offensive line. And I know Bills fans always want, death to PFF. But coming into this season, PFF had the Steelers offensive line ranked 31st in the NFL. The only offensive line that was worse was the New York Giants, which is a dumpster fire of an offensive line right now. And, I expect that quick passing game to come through. And the reason I like the matchup potentially for the Bills from this is you don't have a strong offensive line. I don't think it's necessarily going to mean sacks are going to come for the Bills because of how quick the Steelers get the ball out. But you've got an unproven and potentially bad offensive line. You've got a quick passing attack that allows you to do what you're already built to do on the Bills defense, which is keep everything in front of you. This should be a good barometer of how well the Bills are executing right out of the gate because they play an offense that almost is playing into their strengths a little bit and doesn't threaten them too much.
A little bit. Yeah, one thing I think is interesting is a lot of people are saying, well, this is a new OC and maybe we won't see.
Oh, yeah, Matt Canada.
This type of passing attack and him getting the ball quick. Well, I would counter that with that's actually exactly what Matt Canada wants to do. Yeah. And so this fits perfectly with what Matt Canada wants to do. What you're going to see is more window dressing from Matt Canada than we saw a year ago. Guys in motion, stuff like that. Yeah. I do agree with you a little bit that it plays into what the Bills want to do. My concern is the Bills haven't been great as a tackling.
Oh, that was going to be my next point. Yeah. If you're going to keep all that stuff in front of you, you got to make plays and stop the yards after catch. And when you've got Deontay Johnson, Juju can move when he gets the ball.
Claypool can move a lot more than people think.
Our boy, if they dump it down to Najee Harris, not an easy guy to tackle.
No, a lot of these guys aren't. And Ebron even can move around a little bit as a tight end.
Even Pat Freiermuth, who showed some nice flashes in the preseason for them.
Absolutely. And so that is probably the thing that concerns me the most about this dink and dunk game. And we saw a year ago, even though the Bills won that game against Miami, Ryan Fitzpatrick was dealing against the Bills in that game, and that quick game can really hurt the Bills. Phillip Rivers, another guy that gets the ball out real quick, was dealing against the Bills in that playoff game. So it's been something that has hurt the Bills and not being able to get to a quarterback and impact a quarterback. I agree. I think Bills fans are going to be frustrated on Twitter when they don't have 4 sacks in this game.
Line is terrible. How come we don't? Jerry Hughes sucks. I told you.
We didn't put all this draft and we didn't get any more sacks. What's
a bust? I hate him.
To me, it's all about compressing the pocket and getting hands up in these passing lanes and hoping you get your hands on a few of these passes and tackling. You're going to give up some receptions. Guys are going to get open. This is a good wide receiving core. They're going to get receptions. It's really about fundamentals. Compress the pocket and tackle. Outside of that, I think one thing that I'm a little concerned at is everyone's just pointing to the rookies and the new parts of this offensive line. I don't know that it's worse than the Steelers' offensive line was a year ago. They weren't good. That was not a good offensive line a year ago. Those guys were the Villanuevas.
DeCastro was super
DeCastro. These guys were shells of who they were. And
Pouncey was kind of washed.
Yeah, Pouncey was super washed. And so we see those names and you just associate like, oh, those are really good players. But they were shells of who they were as players at one point. And so these names are different, and so I'm a big fan of some of the rookies that they brought in. I don't know that they're ready now. But I'm not sure that this is a much worse unit than they saw a year ago. And so I think Ben will be able to get the ball out. I think maybe the thing that's going to work best for the Bills is that continuity and some of what they've been able to do and getting some stunts going and confusing these guys that haven't played together in a lot of NFL snaps. And I think that's really probably the benefit. It isn't so much the inexperience, is the inexperience of playing together as an offensive line early on, that you'll be able to maybe some communication errors where you're doing a stun and guys don't pick up, and then you have a free rusher and you're able to get in and impact the quarterback. I think that's probably the Bills' path to success. I'd like to see that blitz number that we saw last year. Taryn Johnson's really, that's probably, in my opinion, one of his strongest assets is being able to come in off the edge when he fires his gun on a blitz and he gets bendy. He finds little hole. He gets small. He gets in those holes. He can be a real terror, especially in the run game. Some run blitzes from Taryn.
He functions like a linebacker when it comes to run support.
Absolutely.
His ability to get for run fits and gap integrity and spill and push coverage. It's tremendous.
And Milano's nasty at it too. So I'd love to see some run blitzes on known run downs, because we know Steelers, part of this revamp of their offensive line and drafting Najee Harris with that first pick, that tells you they want to get the run game going. It was terrible a year ago. I think it was towards the bottom of the league in almost every metric in terms of efficiency in the run game.
They were last in rush yards per game, and then 30th in running DVOA.
Yeah. And so they want to establish that. I think that's a priority for them this offseason. And so I expect the Bills to sell out on the run a number of plays. And I think that they'll do a pretty good job. It sounds like we're probably not going to have Star Latulippe in this one. And that's frustrating, because we've spent 4 months talking about what the defense will be when he's back. But I feel pretty good about what I saw out of Harrison Phillips in this preseason, that we can get through one game without a Star Latulippe, and with this offensive line and some of the concerns there, this might be the game to do it.
It's a very fair point, and I love that you brought up the tackling thing. That was my next talking point here of like kind of what to look for. Like I'm not expecting a ton of sacks. I'm expecting, maybe some quick pressure or some compression that leads to throwaways, or just kind of like dump it down, get rid of it type of thing. I'm expecting, if the Bills do well defensively in this game, you're going to see a lot of punts from the Steelers. I don't think you're going to see a ton of like, 3rd and 17s, or even maybe necessarily a lot of turnovers or sacks or, toxic differential plays. I think you're going to see a lot of screen, pass over the middle, come up, rally, make a tackle, everybody do their 111 type of thing. That's what's going to be successful or lead to success for the Bills defense in this game. The tackling point is huge. I love that. The Bills, surprisingly, for a Sean McDermott defense, I don't know if people really know it, they're not a great tackling defense, like historically, since McDermott's taken over. No, they have not been. And you wouldn't think that, especially with how good of a year they had in 2019. And I know last year was a bit of an outlier and things happened there, but with the guys on this defense that
they're still top 10 DVOA.
That's fair, especially towards the back end of the year. Hell yeah, I love DVOA. You get a lot of talk for, or pump and run for how much you love DVOA. I'm right there with you. I love it. That's one of my biggest metrics to really show what someone's doing, especially. And I love the weighted DVOA.
Weighted DVOA is where it's at.
Exactly. And it started to show what the Bills did last year. And they weren't as bad as everybody thought. But yeah, the tackling can rear its ugly head sometimes. We've seen, whether it's, everybody wants to point out with Tremaine Edmonds or Milano at times, even Poyer has missed tackles, Tre'Davious White, guys.
Who doesn't? Levi Wallace doesn't miss a lot of tackles.
No, very, very low. The lowest missed tackle percentage on the entire Bills defense, and one of the best, not just for corners, but in the entire NFL. Yeah. This is where people come in and they're like, yeah, but that's because he always gives up the completion and comes up and makes an easy tackle because he's always getting beaten coverage.
Just because people don't understand how cover 3 and
that's fair,
quarters coverage and palms work. But yeah, okay.
The guy caught it up front. Yeah. But yeah, just don't. Fair point. Tremaine Edmonds is terrible. Levi's awful. We get it. But yeah, I want to see what they look like coming up and making tackles. And that run defense, I like that you hit it on it already. I don't know if the Steelers' offensive line is, terrible, especially considering it. You put it in a great way. The line last year was a shell of itself, but they lack continuity. They lack game experience. They lack provability and knowing what you're going to get. So if the Bills can take advantage of that, that would be nice. They have an opportunity to take advantage of that. And I think we're also going to get a fair shake in terms of seeing what the Bills' run defense will potentially look like. Granted, Starr is gone, and the Steelers' offensive line lacks continuity and experience individually and together. But I think the Steelers want to pump the ball to Najee Harris. I don't think you get a first-round running back unless you're going to do that. And historically, under Mike Tomlin, the Steelers have been that. It was Le'Veon Bell. Even when Le'Veon Bell, was out, D'Angelo Williams took over. D'Angelo Williams was like the 3-down back. James Conner, they wanted him to be a 3-down back. When James Conner got hurt, they focused Jalen Samuels, and then he got banged. So it was like, okay, let's give it to Benny Snell. Like, they want to run your traditional workhorse running back, 3 downs. Najee Harris fits that mold. He's a much better receiver than people give him credit for. He's big, he's fast, he's strong, he's quick, he's got tremendous hands, he's very athletic. I'm interested to see what the Bills do. And again, from a tackle breaking perspective, Najee Harris breaks tackles. He's not an easy man to break down, to bring down. Deontay Johnson, small, fast, elusive type of guy who, your proverbial make you miss in a phone booth type guy. This is going to be a very interesting barometer in terms of, I don't think it's an offense that should stress the Bills. I don't think it's going to be stressful for the Bills defense from like a scheme or necessarily a talent perspective, but I think it'll stress the Bills fundamentals and technique in several areas in which they've struggled recently, which was the run game and coming up and making tackles. And tackling, I don't want to say like, if they do terrible this game, it's over for me. I will be a little worried. Granted, it's week 1 and I'm not going to, oh my God, everything's terrible, sink the ship, we're done. I will be a little disheartened if we don't do decent in the run game. If we get gouged against a young offensive line, I think a lot of people are going to get down. I would like to see them solid run fits. I would actually see that. I would prefer to see that more than I would the tackling. If the Bills miss some tackles, I can live with that. I mean, I won't like it, but I really want to see what do their run fits look like? What does their gap integrity look like? Because that was something, again, if Star Latulila's hurt, we can't just revert back to that defense where it was like, well, if Star's out, we're screwed. And that's something like that might be my biggest thing to watch for on offense. Tackling is right up there, but those run fits, what are we going to do against a really good running back and an inexperienced offensive line? We should be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think we will. And it hasn't all been bad for the Bills. You look at the matchups against Tennessee over the years here, the last couple of years.
I hate how everybody's always like, oh, Derrick Henry versus the Bills. He doesn't really
hasn't done much.
Even Lamar and that Ravens rushing offense, like the Bills locked that down pretty decently.
When they have to almost hyper focus on it, Indy was probably the one that stands out to me as they probably went into the week trying to hyper focus on that Indy run game, and Indy still dominated.
Well, to be fair, I mean, not to give a cop out, but like, Jonathan Taylor's very good, and that Colts offensive line.
Oh, it's so good.
One of the best in the NFL. Like
Absolutely.
they're right up there. They're not as good as the Browns, but they're in that conversation for like a top 5 offensive line. They're tremendous.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the Browns because those are the types of matchups in the run game that concern me. But I don't know that the Steelers are going to have it all put together. I think Najee's still going to have a good year. I'm still going to be high on Najee Harris. I think he'll have a chance at a rookie of the year type season. But a lot of it he's going to have to do on his own. He's going to have to make people miss. And so a game like this, really on both sides of the ball, I think on paper, the Bills should handle the Steelers, right? And it's going to come down to fundamentals. And Brian Daboll talked about this at length in one of his pressers this summer. What are you working on in the summer? Are you installing a bunch of new stuff? And he was like, we're really hammering home the fundamentals because that's where teams win and lose games in the NFL, right? If you miss on your fundamentals on a play, the guys on the other side of the ball in the NFL are just too good. You can't not be sound in your fundamentals because they'll take advantage of it, even teams that aren't as good as you. And so that's where the Bills, I think, have a potential to slip up in this game is if they're not sound in their fundamentals, and tackling's part of that, gap integrity is part of that. All that stuff matters. It's boring to sit here and talk about. Fans don't want to talk about that stuff. They want to talk about big plays, sacks, interceptions. But really
Super
what matters
Bowls,
more.
MVPs.
Yes. What matters more is week in, week out consistency in those fundamentals. And so that's really what I want to see, that this team is up to that challenge to become a little bit cleaner in that area, because defensively, the disguised coverages work well. They got good talent in all 3 layers of this defense. And I think sometimes the talent has sort of masked some of the fundamental flaws that they've had and the lapses in fundamentals. I want to see them clean up those fundamentals. I think all those other things will come from that, the big plays, the splash plays, when they clean all that up. So That's what I'm going to be looking for here this weekend with the Bills defense is, can they clean up some of the lapses they've had and their ability to consistently stay fundamental?
That's a great point. And
thank you.
You're welcome. You're a good guy. Bringing up this graphic here showing personnel grouping frequency from 2020. And, we all know the Bills love 11 personnel and they're towards the top. But look at the Pittsburgh Steelers there when it comes to usage for 11 personnel. 73% of their offensive personnel last year, they were lined up in 11 personnel, second in the entire NFL. What's interesting, though, is their EPA per play there, as Max added, which I love, was negative 0.03, which was 21st in the NFL. So using 11 personnel a ton, but not tremendously efficient when in 11 personnel, which again adds up to what we led off this segment with, which was not a tremendous DVOA rating for offense, not very good running the ball. They struggled on offense in that aspect. But I wanted to bring this up because, again, it ties into, I think, the fundamental aspect. When you're in 11 personnel, you've got smaller, more athletic, shiftier weaponry type of guys. You're also not necessarily, but also most likely spreading the field out a little bit. You're in space. You have to be sound in your responsibility and coverage. You have to be sound in understanding what your assignment is. You have to be sound in tackling because, again, you might be matched up one-on-one and you're the only guy in your zone and you have to make a tackle, or it's a 2x2 look and you've got two guys out there to match and they run a little screen and you've got to take the proper angle and make the tackle because your other partner there is the one who's taking up the block and things like that. There's going to be aspects to this Steelers offense that's going to stress and strain the fundamentals and the technique of this Bills defense. And I love that you mentioned that because it ties in with the overall theme of what we're looking for. And again, like you mentioned, it ties into what Matt Canada wants to do for this Steelers offense. It's funny, like new offensive coordinator, but still kind of the same philosophy and mindset. He wants to go with that pre-snap motion. Like you mentioned, he's going to throw out interesting formations and he's going to do shifts and all that kind of stuff. But it's still going to be like that short, quick kind of passing attack. They're going to mix in some play action. They are going to run some power run and some gap runs, but also some outside zone. And then, you're going to have that creativity in the formation. So Canada's going to do stuff. I love that you threw out the window dressing line. Do stuff to try and confuse you, misdirect you, mislead you, which has also been a thing that the Bills of times have been victimized with. Tremaine Edmonds, one of the biggest things for me last year wasn't so much the physical aspects, but I thought he was making misreads and making incorrect plays and decisions mentally. I thought some of it stemmed from his shoulder injury. I thought when he was hurt, you could see him. I've said it so many times. You could almost see him like on a play trying to be like, okay, the ball is snapped. Okay, this guard pulled. This guy moved here. And then by the time he's trying to think and do all that, he's standing still and he's already getting blown by and the play's done. Or the lineman's into his body and he's done. So Matt Canada is going to do some stuff that is going to stress you mentally, combined with the formation and the personnel grouping of what the Steelers want to be and what they want to do and what Matt Canada has built this team to do and built his teams to do in his coaching career. You're going to see a similar offense to last year. We're going to see that quick passing, and we're going to see him spread you out a little bit, 11 personnel. Might even see, maybe we'll see some 2 tight end sets. Maybe we'll see some 12 because I know they like Freiermuth, but I think they're going to do some spread out aspects. You might even see more 4 wide this year if they want to roll Deontay Johnson, Juju, James Washington, and Claypool. Maybe they line up Najee Harris outside a little bit, or maybe he's out of the backfield. Yep. 1,000%. You are going to see things that are going to test the Bills defense. And that's why I like this matchup because, again, I don't think anybody who you are in September is not indicative of what you're going to be towards the end of the year. And let alone in week 1, like whatever the Bills are in week 1, the Bills could win this game 60-0. That does not mean exactly. We're on the same page with that. But I like it for being a barometer of where the Bills are, like based on what your opponent is. And I like that they come out of the gate in week 1, especially from a defensive perspective, from the Bills defense perspective, that they're playing a team that will do things to stress the aspects that we've been talking about for a majority of the offseason, which was, okay, what is the run defense going to look like now? Okay, technique and fundamentals and tackling. The only thing that we're really not going to be able to see is, I think, a true pass rush aspect. Because again, we mentioned it, the quick passing game of Pittsburgh is almost going to neutralize that a little bit. But you mentioned a great point earlier. We might be able to see what does the compression of the pocket look like? How well does that length show up for Gregory Rousseau? And does he get in the passing windows and the lanes a little bit more? How well does he adjust to a quick passing aspect? But I like that there is a team that we're going to play in week 1 that gives us some inkling of, okay, we knew this was a problem last year. We did good. Awesome. Let's see where we go from here. Oh, no, we did bad. Okay, can it be fixed? Where do we go from here? I think it's an interesting barometer to start out the year, considering how they're going to attack us and what we've been attacked with and not successful with last year.
Yeah, I agree. And they're going to have some opportunities to take some shots too. They have guys that are speed guys that can take some shots, and they will do that. Claypool can get deep on this team. James Washington is a guy nobody's talking about. He's a deep shot guy that can. They will try to do that. And with Claypool, again, not to harp on anything, I'm a big Levi Wallace fan. He's the kind of receiver that is going to give a Levi Wallace some trouble, big, physical, and fast. That's all things that struggles for Levi. So they'll be able to move the ball against this team. They're going to score some points. I don't think the Bills defense is so elite that they're going to come out and shut down the Pittsburgh Steelers entirely. And my concern is, allowing them to stay in the game to the point where you're in the fourth quarter, and then they have some guys that can make some shots and make some explosive plays. I just want to make sure that the Bills keep this at enough of an arm's length where when they score in the fourth, they're just getting within a 2-possession game. They're
like the 49ers game.
Exactly.
Where it was just like, oh, they scored, but we're up by 3 touchdowns. So
exactly. And that's what I need the Bills to do, is keep it enough at an arm's length, because they still have playmakers that can make explosive plays and break this defense open. And all it takes is one play where you're not sound in your fundamentals, and they've got guys that are good professionals that can do this. So this isn't some trash team. And I'm not trying to make it sound like
Mike Tomlin's a very good coach.
Right. Yeah, they're well coached at all 3 phases. So this is going to be a tough, Josh Allen put it, right out there to start. This is going to be a fight. This is going to be, punch for punch fight in this game. And I think the Bills are going to be able to do enough to keep it at that arm's length where you might get a late touchdown, but it's still a 2-possession game and you're not going to be super concerned about it. But I agree with you. It's going to be an interesting test in terms of some of the stuff that we've heard this team's working on. And maybe we don't get the answers to that test as much as we want in week 1, but it will still be a good way to look at the progress that's been made.
Yeah. And for sure. And I love that, some of the points you touched on there, this Steelers team, defensively, I think they're lauded and talked about. We mentioned so many of the studs out there, but they've still got talent on that offensive side. Deontay Johnson is sweet. And, Najee Harris, again, I think Najee Harris is going to break tackles and make plays, not because the Bills' defense is trash, but because Najee Harris is a really good running back. Like, he's going to make people miss. He's going to shake people. He's got to loosen for how big. He can win in multiple ways on the offensive side of the ball. So that's my thought too. Like, I do not want to see this running game start to go, because Matt Canada likes to build in that play action pass aspect. And I don't want to start to see the running game work, and then all of a sudden it's play action. Let's let Chase Claypool, who runs like a low 4.40, let's let him go one-on-one deep with Levi Wallace, and maybe are we throwing a jump ball up to a guy who's bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic? Sometimes that stuff just beats out technique. That's why you want guys with those raw traits and measurables and tools, because if you can coach them up and add technique, it's a beautiful mix. But, you mentioned it with Levi. We've seen it with Tre'Davious White. Tre'Davious White is so technically sound in his footwork, in his hands, mentals, everything like that. But the receivers he struggles with are the receivers that anybody's going to struggle with. Your guys that are going to be, I know he didn't play last year against Tennessee, but the guys like A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, and these guys that are just, that have technique, DK Metcalf, these guys that have technique, but they're just physical monsters because they're strong, because they're big, because they're fast. Even the Tyreek Hills of the world, there's just a certain point where someone is so athletic or so big or so strong or so fast, you can still win with your technique,
right?
But you have to be almost perfect with your technique, because if you're not, their raw traits can easily beat you. And if you've got somebody who can add technique to their raw traits, it makes them even harder to defend. Like, we're not talking about them, but I want to see what DK Metcalf looks like because he's such a physical monster. If he's adding technique and polish to his route running, oh my God, like who's going to be able to defend DK Metcalf? It's the same with Julio for all those years. Physical specimen,
right?
But he was a tremendously sound route runner and just could run every route in the book and understood coverage and what was going on and so smart. And I don't think the Steelers necessarily have those guys, but they've got guys who can threaten from a physical perspective. Guys like Claypool, and if the run game starts to get working, if Najee Harris gets rolling a little bit, and again, this is a well-coached team. Mike Tomlin, I think the stat, I forget who said it, and I wish I could give the credit. Mike Tomlin's never been under 500 in his entire tenure with the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is just, and I know like he inherited a good team from Kaiir, and he's always had Big Ben.
Yeah, but that was so long ago.
Right, like this team is now just his hands, and even with the year, Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges 2 years ago, they still could have made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and in this tenure too, we're talking about the Ravens have been good almost the entire tenure. Cincy was good early in his tenure and a perennial playoff team, and then the Browns now are good. This is while there's been ups and downs within that division, it hasn't been like the AFC South where you have two teams that are just totally trash and you can win the division at 8-8
and
some
you're just
years.
Coasting every year, coasting. No, and especially with all the times they've won the divisions, they've had to play the Patriots a bunch in the regular season. They've had to play the winners of the AFC South a bunch, whether it was Tennessee when they were good or the Colts when they were good with luck or when it was Houston and, winning division after division. So they got a good track record of coaching. They have good leadership. They do have talent. I like the Bills' odds in this game, but I feel like I say it every week just because I'm a paranoid guy. I will caution fans against just thinking like, we beat them 2 years in a row. They got blown out against Cleveland. This is going to be a cakewalk. The Bills are favored by like 6.5, 7 points. We're at home. I'm picking this one easy. Like there is a recipe for the Steelers to win this game. And there are definitely legitimate avenues for the Steelers to, at the very least, make things difficult for the Buffalo Bills. And I don't know, when you have especially studs or elite players, I don't know, maybe TJ Watt is just invigorated by that new contract and he just does what game wreckers do and is just a monster all game. And we have to account for that. Maybe Alex Highsmith, who we didn't even really talk about, takes that jump at the other edge rusher this year. Maybe Melvin Ingram is healthy this year, former Charger, now the third man in that rotation up front with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Maybe they bring a lot of pressure. Taylor put an awesome comment here that
I was going to put that
happen.
up too. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Weird things can happen week one. Like sometimes you just can't call it.
I hate week one so much. And that's the worst fear. I think on paper, analyzing this game objectively, I think I have it. Bills should win this game, in my opinion. I have it 27-17. I think that's fair. Again, I think them getting a late touchdown. I think it'll be probably 27-10. And then they get a late touchdown, makes it look a little bit like it was a closer game. But week one changes all of that, and crazy stuff happens. And let's not lie to ourselves either. The Bills, historically, over the last couple of years with Josh Allen and Sean McDermott, have started out slow in these week one games against teams, again, that I thought that they should beat pretty easily. And it took a while for them to get going. They won games, but it still took a while for them to get going. So I won't be shocked if they come out and there's a couple bumps in the road and there's some 3-and-outs and things like that. And they don't get the ball moving exactly like we think they will. And it takes a little bit to get this offense going. And that's the problem with week one for me. And this team does have, we've talked about it now throughout both sides of the ball. They have enough playmakers on both sides of the ball where if you let them keep it close, they can make that big splash play to take an edge on you. So I think the Bills really need to jump out to a lead and just maintain that lead 2 to 3 possessions the entire game. And that's going to be the path to a nice, relaxing, easy Sunday, maybe eating some one pie pizza, maybe.
Oh, I like that aspect. What's, I guess your final little takeaway here. What is your biggest thing to watch for? Could be a player, could be a side of the ball, could be a specific aspect. What's your one big thing? If you don't have one, I have mine, but feel free to go first.
I got one, and I'll piggyback off. Greg actually brought this up as our Uncle Jumbo's is a sponsor of ours, and we do our Uncle Jumbo's player spotlight, and we spotlighted Isaiah McKenzie, a guy that we really haven't talked about here tonight. We didn't talk about a whole lot most of the week here. I am interested. He's back healthy. He was a full participant in practice here this week. I'm really interested with the departure of Andre Roberts, who was just a solid top of the NFL return guy for the Bills. I think also one thing that I measured the toxic differential every week. He was always in those guys that's top and getting the Bills in good field position. How much of a drop off? I think it will be a drop off. I just don't know how much of a drop off is it going to be in the return game with Isaiah McKenzie. Is he muffin punts? Does he have the control? Does he have the awareness of when to field kicks, when not to, when to call fair catch, those types of things? That's something I'm really interested to see, because he's a guy that wasn't guaranteed a roster spot with that contract that he got this summer. That was a low end contract to come back. That told me the Bills didn't have a ton of faith in him. They brought in Brandon Powell. They brought in guys to compete for that kick return job. He won it, and I'll give it to him. I think Stevenson was also right there neck and neck with him to win that job. So he's an unknown on the special teams that I'm not sure what we're going to get. We've seen the we know that he can make explosive plays for sure, but can he have the consistency, which is what matters the most to me on special teams. And then I also, on the flip side, the reviews were rave reviews about his summer, early in the summer, out of the slot and as that gadget role. And I'm interested to see, does that role increase for him? Because as the season went on last year, that gadget role and him in the slot and the amount of snaps he was taking really started to die off as the games got more important. I want to see where that role is here this year with the Brian Dable. And is he going to be more a part of this offense, or is it going to be specialized? You know, he kind of talked about opponent week to week. We talked about spreading this team out, and we didn't even mention Isaiah McKenzie. If he's a true slot threat, like we heard he was able to be in camp, that just gives you another layer to add these guys and say, okay, now really play cover one, because now we're going to put Beasley on one side. We're going to have Diggs, Beasley, Manny Sands, and now we're going to add a speedster in Isaiah McKenzie, who we believe has refined his route running game. So I think he's a weapon, and I'm really interested to see how much of a weapon he is. He looked good in the preseason as a more reliable wide receiving target. So he's a guy that I'm really going to keep an eye on for how he's used in this offense this year, and then where he's going to be and what kind of drop off we see from going from Andre Roberts to Isaiah McKenzie in the kick return game.
I like that a lot. Also, what's fun to mention there, Steelers have a rookie punter as well, who showed pretty decent in the preseason, but small sample size. You don't really know what he is yet. So what does that kicking game look like in the punt aspect? And I'm for Isaiah McKenzie. You touched on it, the muff punt aspect I'm worried about, but also the Andre Roberts just always seemed to have a really good knack of knowing like when to come up and fair catch it or when to let it bounce. Like he didn't really screw us over with like he'd let it bounce and we'd be stuck inside the 5 or the 10 and things like that. He was very savvy and heady back there. That's a very fair one. Nice call with Isaiah McKenzie.
Thanks, man.
Mine, you're welcome. Mine, I touched on it a little. I want to see how the Bills handle Najee Harris, because I think it combines multiple things in one. One, it takes a look at the tackling aspect. 2, it takes a look at the run fits and the run defense aspect, which is something that I've had my eye on since the trade deadline last year. And just how do the Bills look against a legitimately good running back and against a team that wants to get their running back the ball, and whether that's in the running game, passing game, screen game, anything like that. Anytime Najee Harris has the ball, it's either going to allow me to focus on the tackling or the run fits and the run aspect. So I think that would be my biggest takeaway or thing to look forward to. I like this comment here from Taylor. What if we just go 7 wides? I mean, all these offensive linemen are holding our passing game back. You could do that. I would be down for that. A little creative wrinkle. Maybe throw some pre-snap motion into it and just misdirection and all those types of things. That could
try
work.
it. I'll do anything once.
Oh man, you are just my kind of guy.
Yeah, right.
What parting thoughts do you have for everyone here?
Yeah, I think my only thoughts is to caution on overreacting to week one, whether it's the Bills win and they don't generate enough sacks. And then I do think the media here in Buffalo is sort of starting the rumblings of that's something they've asked multiple times about, or how the defensive line and the additions of this defensive line are going to be judged. Maybe they walk away from this game with 4 sacks and we don't have to talk about it, but I don't think that's going to be the case. So don't overreact to stuff like that. Don't overreact to a dominant Bills win against the Steelers team that we talked about with all these problems. Don't overreact if it's a closer game than you'd like it to be. Week one, your team's not measured by who they are week one. They're, Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier talked about it all year last year, that you don't know your team until November, December. And you especially don't know them in the first week of the season. So enjoy it. Football's back. There's going to be fans in the stands. Yes. That's going to be cool. The Ralph is going to be rocking. I'm excited to see this, and just enjoy that football's back and that this team is the deepest team. Data Bills fan talked about the excitement since 1993. They're the deepest team since the Super Bowl era. Every outlet has had at least 1 or 2 analysts pick the Bills to win the Super Bowl, pick Josh Allen to win the MVP. I don't know how to act.
I know
with my team.
I feel like Ricky Bobby. Like, yes. I don't know what to do with my hands. Like,
I don't know what's going on. I was talking to my brother. He's a Bears fan, and I was like, I don't mean to sound like a conceited prick about my team, but I don't know what I'm doing right now. Like, people are talking about us as Super Bowl team, like Vegas, we're right there with the best teams in the world. Enjoy this. I don't know. I think it's going to be this way for a while with this regime and this quarterback and the way Brandon Beane can compose a roster, but we don't know. It could end quicker than we think. So enjoy this while we've got it, and be obnoxious when we win, and rub it in people's faces. We've waited a long time to act like the jerk fans that we've hated for so long, and it's okay to do that. So enjoy this. It's special. I've lived now in Buffalo for 8 years or so, 9 years, and I haven't seen just the excitement. I walk my neighborhoods all the time, and the amount of Bills flags, signs, people wearing Bills gear. I've never seen it weeks ahead of the season starting, and just the anticipation of a hopefully successful season. So I want this so bad for the city and the fans. And so I'm real excited to enjoy this and then talk about it all year long. We get the benefit of having a good team to talk about, and that is the coolest freaking thing that we get to do.
Well done. Well said. Well put.
Thanks,
yeah,
man.
It's funny you mentioned it. Yeah, I don't know how to act either. Like, just we have a good team. Things are all on the up and up. I'm waiting. I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do. But it's tremendously exciting, and I'm very excited for this season. I'm very excited to kick it off with you. I really appreciate you stopping by and joining me on this episode.
You tell folks you're going to be joining us.
I was going to say I have not. I was going to segue into that and see again. We're right here. I hope Greg is watching live just to see how much we're on the same page.
It's the eye kind. I'm looking you dead in the eye through my camera.
That's fair. I'm looking at you in your eyes. Look at me in my eyes. No, yeah, I was going to say it's always been tough to wrangle you. You are the enigmatic Aaron Quinn, but you've been on the show multiple times now, 2 weeks in a row, because last week we did the 4 Horsemen spot, and I was going to say we will be
new year, new me.
Ooh, new Mr. New Quinn. And we're gonna be seeing a little more of each other because you as you alluded to just now, and I think you or Greg, I think it was you mentioned it last week on Disguised Coverage. Yeah, you and Greg have been gracious enough to welcome me aboard to the Cover One post-game show. So I'll be joining you guys live.
We're excited.
Yep, after every Bills game. I'm really pumped. You guys DM me, and yeah, I'm very excited. So I will be riding with you and Greg this Sunday after the Bills Steelers, which energy, excitement. We get to do the post game, get to talk about it. Hopefully it's coming after a win. Yeah, I'm tremendously excited. Like it's an awesome way to start this year to have, someone of your caliber on the show, and then to be able to do the post game this upcoming Sunday with you and Greg. And the Bills are good. Cover One is good. Disguised Coverage is good. And I want to close it out. Yeah, you're damn right, Taylor. I'm going to leave this up because I think this is a better thing than Toodles, which is a tough thing to say because I love Toodles. Yeah, you're right, Taylor. All caps post game is going to be lit with 2 exclamation points. There's a lot of good things coming from Cover One. I want to start to close things out with some of the ways that we started. I want to mention the sponsor, One Pie Pizza. Again, the link to the menu is in the description of this episode, wherever you are watching or listening. Send multiple tweets about it. Go out, get yourself a One Pie Pizza. It's delicious. Mention that Cover One sent you. You're going to get $3 off a half sheet. they've got a limited menu, and what they do, their philosophy is, rather than do a whole bunch of stuff and just be like above average at all of it, they do a small amount of things and they do them all exquisitely. And it's tremendous, everything they do. Go out and get yourself some One Pie Pizza. Also, now that the season's about to start, Underdog Fantasy, sponsor and friend of Cover One for a majority of this offseason. We've talked about all the best ball drafts and all the drafts leading up to the season, but now that the season's about to start, now we start to get into those player prop parlays, the DFS aspect. There's a lot of excitement to come through with Underdog Fantasy. And as we've continued to say, if you haven't by now, download the Underdog
right now.
Fantasy. Look at you bringing it up. Look at you playing. Download that Underdog Fantasy app. And when you download it, use promo code COVER1. That's Cover One, all one word. Cover the number one, all one word. When you put in $10, Underdog's going to give you 25. So you put in $10 and all of a sudden you start with $35. That's a tremendous deal. I've done a ton of the best ball drafts. Obviously,
I'm doing pick'ems tonight. I already got Brady, got the over. I took over on 2.5 touchdowns, got 3.
Ooh.
I had Dak at 2. He's at 2.
Okay.
OJ Howard, I had 19. He's got no receptions. And Ezekiel Elliott is at 1 reception. I need 2 more receptions from Elliott, and I'll win some money.
All the pick'ems, all the fun stuff. It's genuinely, again, like I mentioned it with One Pie Pizza. It's the same for Underdog. We don't partner. Same thing with you guys in West Her and Uncle Jumbo's. No, none of us partner with anyone or take on a sponsorship for anyone that doesn't legitimately have a good product and are good people. And yeah, it's just awesome to be able to be tied to something as tremendous as Underdog Fantasy. So download that app. Use promo code COVER1. Get yourself a free $25 when you deposit 10. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguised Coverage. Please rate and review and subscribe to Cover One. Drop a like on your way in or your way out of this episode on whatever you are listening to, whatever platform or app or whatever have you. Again, I say it all the time. I know it's corny and cheesy, but all the likes and rates and reviews and subscriptions, it goes a long way towards helping us to track and trend and get in front of more eyes and ears and all that good stuff. And thank you to everybody who joined us live. I know, first Thursday night football game of the year. And there's a lot of activity, so I appreciate everybody who rode with us live and was tuned in. The chat was fun as always. Thank you guys for that. And whether you are listening later, watching later, again, whatever have you, thank you so much for your download, your listen, your view, taking the time out to enjoy this episode of Disguised Coverage, which I hope you enjoyed. And if you didn't, that's fine. Find your enemy and give them this episode if you thought this episode was terrible and try and ruin their day. With this Disguised Coverage. I'm all about the people, whether it's good or bad and any of that stuff. And so thank you to all the people. Myself and Cover One would be nothing without you guys. And again, thank you, Mr. Aaron Quinn, for starting
Thanks
this year
for
off
having me,
right
man.
and joining me. Yeah, hell yeah. It's
love coming on here.
It was a good time. I appreciate you. You're a good man. And we probably made Greg jealous, but so be it.
Yeah, that's his fault.
That is his fault. I know he's watching, Greg. I know you're watching. But yeah, appreciate you, Aaron. Appreciate all the good people that tuned in and listened and watched and all that stuff. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday nights or whatever time or day it is that you're listening to this. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Football season's here. Real regular season football. Join myself and Aaron and Greg. Oh man, it's crazy to even say that, on the Cover One post-game show live this Sunday immediately after the Pittsburgh Steelers game against the Buffalo Bills. Man,
celebrating a win.
Celebrating a win. Hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, all that good stuff. Take care, everyone. Go Bills. I'll see you next week. And I'll also see you this Sunday after the Cover One post game. And tomorrow after Cover One Fantasy. I do a lot of things. Hashtag workhorse.